The bells of the royal palace began ringing before sunrise, not for celebration, not for victory, but for death. Black banners hung from the palace towers as servants whispered in fear through candlelit halls. Princess Ilara, the only daughter of the king, had died suddenly during the night. She was only 19. Some claimed it was illness. Others whispered poison. But inside the palace, the truth mattered less than the king's grief. Because King Edric was not simply mourning. He was losing his mind. For days, he locked himself inside the princess's chambers beside her body. The palace became silent. Musicians stopped playing. Servants walked carefully, terrified of making noise near the royal wing. Then the king noticed someone, a servant girl named Lillian. She was 17, quiet, and nearly invisible among the palace staff. She carried water through the halls and cleaned fireplaces while nobles ignored her existence. But she shared one terrifying resemblance with the dead princess. The same pale skin, the same dark hair, the same gray eyes. When the king first saw her standing beneath candlelight outside Ilara's chambers, witnesses claimed the color drained from his face. For one brief moment, he believed his daughter had returned. The next morning, guards dragged Lillian from the servants' quarters and brought her before the throne. The king stared at her silently before whispering words that chilled everyone in the room. Make her into Ilara. At first, people assumed grief had broken the king temporarily, but the orders continued. Lillian had moved into the princess's chambers. Royal tailors measured her body for dresses identical to Ilara's gowns. Her servants' clothes were burned. Her hair was washed in scented oils. Pearls and jewels once worn by the dead princess were clasped around her neck. But changing her appearance was not enough. The king wanted the illusion perfected. Tutors arrived daily to reshape her entirely. She studied the princess's handwriting until her own handwriting disappeared. Voice instructors trained her to speak exactly like Ilara. Noble women taught her how to walk, smile, and sit like royalty. Whenever she failed, punishment followed. Sometimes she was locked alone in dark rooms for hours. Sometimes, servants struck her hand with wooden rulers until she corrected herself. Weeks became months. Slowly, Lillian's identity began fading beneath layers of silk and fear. The palace stopped calling her by her real name. Now everyone addressed her as Princess Ilara. At first, Lillian tried desperately to resist. Each night, before sleeping, she whispered her real name quietly to herself, terrified she might forget it forever. But eventually, the exhaustion crushed her spirit. When every mirror shows someone else, when every voice repeats the same lie, the mind begins to surrender. The king grew obsessed with the fantasy. Banquets resumed, musicians returned, nobles bowed before Lillian exactly as they once bowed before the dead princess. And anyone who questioned the illusion vanished from the palace soon afterward. One elderly maid accidentally called Lillian by her real name during dinner. She disappeared the next morning. But beneath the jewels and luxury, Lillian lived in constant terror because she understood something horrifying. The king did not love her. He loved a ghost. A ghost can never truly return. One winter evening during a royal feast, a visiting noble asked Lillian about a childhood memory only the real princess would know. The hall fell silent. Lillian froze. For one terrible second, the illusion cracked. The king's face twisted with rage. That night, guards dragged the nobleman, screaming through the palace corridor for insulting the crown. Later, servants claimed the king entered Lillian's chambers, weeping like a broken child. "You must become her completely," he whispered. "Don't leave me again." But no matter how perfectly Lillian performed, the dead princess never returned. Because no person can replace another without losing themselves in the process. Years later, after the king's death, palace workers reported seeing a lonely woman wandering the abandoned royal gardens at night, wearing faded royal gowns and speaking softly to herself. Some believed it was Lillian. Others claimed she had forgotten who she truly was long ago. History never recorded what became of her. Only this remained. A servant girl entered the palace as herself and disappeared inside another person's life forever. Stories like this remind us how dangerous power becomes when grief turns into possession. Sometimes the cruelest prisons are not made of stone, but of fear, control, and the loss of identity. If you enjoyed this dark historical story, subscribe for more forgotten tragedies, disturbing royal secrets, and hidden horrors from history.